This is the show where we are about to break down the final college football game, the biggest college football game of the season, and that is the championship. I'm Max with Bobby again, and we are the Weekenders here again on Multiplicity Media. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Um, you know, one more. We got to do this one more time and talk about two teams who um, we knew were good teams all year, have taken kind of like interesting paths to get to where they are. But Ohio State and Notre Dame obviously will face each other in the championship. Ohio State favored by 8.5. The total is 45.5. And this game, of course, is going to be Monday night in Atlanta. So, um, lots to discuss. I want to start here, though. What were your takeaways? Let's start with Notre Dame Penn State because we didn't really, recap that game or anything. Um, what what's like the takeaway from that game that you feel like will matter in on Monday night?
Yeah, I thought that game was, just as well, like evenly matched as we kind of thought it would be. And I think my biggest takeaway is Notre Dame Notre Dame's really, really good at like just being ready for the moment. This entire playoff run, they have made the right plays when it counts, and other teams, have found ways to completely self-combust. You look at what happened with Georgia at the end of the first half in their Sugar Bowl game, and several plays from Penn State down the line. That just brutal Drew Aller interception that set up the game-winning score for Notre Dame as well. They're really resilient. They're really tough, and that's a team that I feel like obviously have been, I don't want to say slandered because I think that insults were fair. When you lose to Northern Illinois, had been doubted all season, but they've just found a way to stick through it. And I think that's a dangerous team to face, for anyone. And especially when you look at how this matchup, Ohio State Notre Dame, has gone in the previous two seasons, because we just came off of a home and home with these two teams. Notre Dame kind of played the same way against Ohio State. They hung around, and if they can find a way to continue to scrap like they have all season, like they have all playoff run, and take advantage of mistakes and opportunities, then they have a chance in this one.
Yeah, I agree with you there. For the Notre Dame Penn State, for me, like, it really showed me like how situationally sound the Fighting Irish actually are, and I think that's really important when we talk about a championship team. Like, when convergence need to happen, when stops need to happen, when you need to play your best football and not make mistakes. The Irish did a great job with that against Penn State, especially in a game that was a little bit more, I would say, muckier than the game against Georgia. So to me, um, that that was huge. In seeing that from Notre Dame, that's my takeaway for them against Ohio State. Like, for them to really, and we're going to dive into it more, but I think for Notre Dame to really have a chance, um, they're going to have to not only play the most perfect game possible, but also like force Ohio State into some errors that um, are going to look uncharacteristic because Ohio State has looked so buttoned up, um, especially in the playoffs. So that's that's for sure my takeaway um, in this one from Notre Dame Penn State for sure. What about Ohio State Texas? Still, you were right on the head with your lock. of picking Ohio State in the points. But the interesting thing about that was that the game was closer than the final score indicated. I mean, if anybody watched, you saw that Ohio State sort of separated at the end. But I mean, that game was pretty close. Texas had a chance there at the end, or towards the end, I should say. Ohio State, Texas. Like, what's the big takeaway from that is going to matter for this game?
Yeah, ironically, for a guy who's been kind of downplaying the Longhorns all season, that was kind of the game that earned respect for me for Texas. I thought that was their best performance of the year for the most part. They really were resilient. They hung with an Ohio State team that I felt like was better the entire night. I thought, and yeah, Texas, it was one of those games that weirdly it felt like watching Texas in a way on the Ohio State end. The Buckeyes, kind of dominated that game, controlled the flow of it. And then you look at the scoreboard and you're like, how in the hell are they only up 7? And, that's kind of what Texas was doing all year to the Arkansas and, Vanderbilts of the world. But credit to Longhorns for keeping that thing close. But when it counted, when it mattered, the Buckeyes made the big plays. Sawyer is going to be an Ohio State legend forever for that massive return for the touchdown. That was a huge play. And I think, to me, the biggest thing you can look at is what Texas did right is similar to some things that Michigan did right. The physicality, that defense that the Longhorns possess is really, really solid. It really gave Ohio State fits. And that's one of the things that I think Notre Dame, that's one of their biggest strengths. So I think there's a lot for the Irish to glean from that game as they prepare to take on the Buckeyes on Monday. That I don't want to say there's a blueprint, but there's certainly things you can do to make your chances a lot better. And on the defensive end, on the offensive end is going to be the problem for the Irish. We'll get to that at that point. But I think Ohio State definitely showed, I don't know, a little bit of you can see where you can kind of muck them down and a little bit of vulnerability, but I think they also showed a tremendous amount of heart and a tremendous amount of that's a very good football team, and that was a tough environment to win in, and that is a team that feels like a championship team.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like a championship. I agree with you. My takeaway for sure was like the first 2 games Ohio State played in, Oregon, Tennessee, it definitely felt like Ohio State was just like on a different level than everybody else. And I think what Texas was able to do was like match the physicality that Ohio State brought. Texas, I think it's so interesting that like Sark just let Quinn play out the game. And maybe it's because, Quinn said it in the pregame interview with, I believe it was Pete or Chris Fowler. But he said, "Yeah, I'm going to the NFL." Pretty much, there wasn't like there was speculation, in reports, but Quinn sounded very sure of himself. So obviously, you think the guy goes into an interview, he knows he's going to go to the draft and see what happens. Well, his coach probably knew it too, right? So from a certain standpoint, you're like, okay, well, maybe Sark was just like, yeah, let's, this last game was a Longhorn. Let's ride with him and we'll live with the results. But I think in that game, there was definitely opportunity where you could have made a change of quarterback because it was obvious that Texas needed some level of mobility at the quarterback position to keep plays alive and keep plays going. And Quinn couldn't provide that. But anyway, I say all that to say that that game was definitely in hand for the other team. And Ohio State's first 2 college football playoff games were not like that. So I think that's an interesting takeaway in itself. Like coming into this game, is it just that Texas is at a maybe closer level to championship level than we maybe previously thought? Maybe they're closer. You know, they match up well, or is Ohio State, starting to let their foot off the gas maybe a little bit, maybe a tiny bit, because the way that game ended definitely gives you great momentum going into this game. So it's interesting. I mean, we're gonna see when the kickoff happens and stuff, but that's my that was my takeaway from that.
I also think you can't discredit the amount of tape that Texas had on Will Howard, and experience of playing him. They've been playing this guy since 2020. So I think there's an element of, a little bit of familiarity there as well. But, overall, I thought it was a good game plan, but the game was decided by big plays, and Ohio State simply had way, way more of them.
Yeah.
It completely flipped the game.
Well, that's a great segue, I think, into the next topic we're going to talk about, because, I mean, a lot of they're going to break down position by position, coaching matchups, whatever, down the line. I just want to do a quick vibe check, honestly. Maybe a little bit more entertaining than like actual like X's and O's. But in this spot, I mean, we got two quarterbacks in Riley Leonard and Will Howard that are capable of doing incredible things and also capable of making some head scratching decisions. Now, Will Howard's been on a little bit of a tear. If you look at just the overall CFP numbers. And I think Riley Leonard is dominating in a different way. And obviously the difference between the two is also going to come down to the weapons that one has over the other. And so all of those factors considered, and I'm sure that we can break them down, but just strictly off vibes, like who do you trust more, Will Howard or Riley Leonard?
Yeah, I mean that's that is one hell of a question, because you're right, they are pretty similar. They've both been playing pretty well. The ability for both of them to kind of make stuff happen with their run, through the running game, but also the ability for both defenses to stop them is high. It's they're both kind of facing the same situation in a way. I right now, if I had to pick one, I'm trending Will Howard, just because I feel like Leonard relies on running a little bit more than Howard. I feel like the Irish offense is at its best when Howard's able to move around a bit. I think it's in a championship game, especially, things tighten up a lot more. This Ohio State defense is absolutely out of this world. No discredit to the Notre Dame defense, which I think is very, very good, just not on that level. So can Leonard run the ball as effectively? I'm not sure. I also don't think Howard can either. But if you take away the running game from Howard, I don't think that kills the offense in a way. I think he just has simply too many weapons, more weapons than, Notre Dame does. So I feel like the versatility of those offenses, I don't want to say night and day, but I like Ohio State's versatility much more than I like Notre Dame's.
Yeah, I mean, for me, if we're talking about vibes, give me Riley Leonard all day. Based off like his swagger, his experience, the way that he just wills that team to like the finish line each and every time they need him to. I think those teams are sometimes the scariest to face, because it's not like you can look at it all day and be like, oh, like the passing numbers are bad and they don't have weapons and yada yada yada. I think that's all fair. Those are all fair points, and those all may factor into what happens, especially considering how talented Ohio State is defensively in the secondary, and what the problems that talent presents even if you have good receivers and good and good weapons, like we saw with Texas. Um, but those teams often, and again, where it's like the quarterback is putting everyone on his back, man. Sometimes those teams just just find a way. Some of those quarterbacks just are able to do it and make things happen. And the right block gets thrown, the right they get the right penalty or whatever. Um, Kind of reminiscent of like um, Cam Newton Auburn team or um, I don't want to say Tim Tebow because Tim Tebow college and Tim Tebow NFL was like completely different, but I don't know, like just some of the teams where you just have a baller at QB, man, like that can make all the difference in the world. And I think that's what Notre Dame has. And I think at the end of the day, like when we talk about just trust, I'm probably trusting in Riley Leonard more, but I'm I also have a lot of trust in um I have a lot of trust in Ohio State from the standpoint of their like talent and not so much Will Howard, although Will Howard has done a phenomenal job, especially in the CFP. If you look at the numbers, um, all right, I think a lot of discussions are going to be on quarterback. A lot of discussions are going to be on coach. I didn't put this question in the doc, Bobby, but I am really curious about like this coaching matchup. I think Ryan Day went through his lumps. A few weeks ago, he was definitely getting fired. He saved his job certainly by getting in this position. Ohio State as an 8.5 point favorite, losing this would be a tough pill, but he's gonna keep his job no matter what, I think. Marcus Freeman, sort of, although Notre Dame is a great team, and even before the Northern Illinois happened, we knew that they could be a contender. Like Freeman and Notre Dame still kind of feels like a Cinderella story. But Marcus Freeman, the only strike against him is that he just hasn't been doing it very long. Um, so I think this is such an interesting coaching matchup, and I'm baffled over like who I would trust more as a coach. I'm very curious to know who you would side with from a coaching standpoint.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very interesting matchup. And, obviously the day question has been a thing, given what happened with Michigan. And, when you look at Freeman, probably one of the more noticeable coaching mistakes he's had in his tenure at Notre Dame happened against the Buckeyes last time out when they didn't have enough men on the field for that goal line stand. They could have gotten in. But I feel like it is a chance for, I don't want to say, especially for Marcus Freeman, who is very new to this or not very new to this. He's in year 3, but he is like he's still rising on the way up. And a national championship would be a defining, massive moment for him. But losing, I don't think, is an indictment on him in big games at all. It's just, maybe just not time at this point. But I feel like in terms of the head-to-head matchups, I think Day has the edge. He's had the edge the past 2 times out against the Irish. And more importantly, I feel like he really likes playing against Notre Dame because of Lou Holtz, this weird beef they have. So I think he is kind of revved up for it. So the man can't beat Michigan, but he gets fired up to beat Notre Dame and an old retired coach, I guess. So I think, to me, I would go Day at the moment. I think it's really, really even overall. I think I just trend towards, a little bit more experience with Day and a little bit more proof in the pudding with what we've seen these two teams play back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, Dave's a great answer, right? I mean, at the end of the day, and this is the point that a lot of people were bringing up, like during the talk about like him losing his job, is like, well, technically he's beaten everybody except just his biggest rival. Like he does he's fine against everybody else. It's just Michigan. That's his biggest bugaboo. So maybe not a reason to throw him under the bus, so to speak, or to throw him away. But I mean, yeah, what Marcus Freeman's doing is just like incredible. And as I said, a lot of it probably has to do with just what Riley Leonard had, like the juice that he has, but still a lot of credit to Freeman for pulling this team out of the hole that they were definitely looking down when they lost that game to Northern Illinois. We've said it so many times, but I mean, that is one of the greatest coaching feats, we've ever seen in college football, especially. And again, like thank God for the expansion, because this is a team that definitely needed it at this time. Okay. Let's get down to some best bets for this game. Obviously, there's obviously some props you can look at. The game line itself. We'll get to our locks of the week and everything like that in just a second. But yeah, any props or any like what stands out to you like the most in terms of the best bets?
Yeah, I think there's some really interesting ones for sure. And my initial thought was kind of keying in on Jeremiah Love's rushing yards, because he has been dealing with a couple issues recently, a bit of a consistent knee injury here and there. He only had 46 against Penn State, but to me, I feel like the odds makers got the 41.5 at a really good level, and I feel like that's like a 45-yard rushing game. Even though I think the Buckeyes defense is really good at stopping the run. As I just could see him breaking out for a little bit more than that. So I'm staying away from that. What I do like, TreVeyon Henderson, over 58.5 rushing yards. I think Henderson has been an underrated part of this Buckeyes running back core, especially because you have to kind of share it with Judkins. But I think he has been just as impactful as as Judkins, but he's kind of slept on. So I don't hate 58.5 over 58.5 for TreVeyon Henderson there, but I don't know. That's a tricky deal. Yeah. Actually, you know what I'm going to do with Henderson? Let's take a look at his receiving props, because I actually like him better as a receiving back. So yeah, over 20.5 for Henderson receptions. That's the play by far. I love that. Yeah.
Over 20.5 receptions or receiving yards?
Receiving yards, not reception, not total receptions. Okay. They're not going to look that he's good, but he ain't that good. Over 20.5 receiving yards. That's the play. We're sticking with that. I feel like he's best whenever you throw the ball to him out of the backfield. So we're going to go Henderson.
Okay. So sticking to the quarterbacks, man, my best bet is kind of like, if you want to combine these two, you can. I love Will Howard to throw an interception. So if you can find one that's like over an interceptions prop on whatever you use, I definitely feel like Will Howard's going to toss one. Notre Dame's an advantageous defense. Their turnover differential is plus 15. They create turnovers so well. Will Howard is definitely bound to toss you one. So I love that. And then if you want to combine that with like, if it's possible to do under the half interception for Leonard, I love that. Just because I don't think he throws the ball that much. Um, if you want to play it safer, then maybe you go, under on his attempts, his passing attempts. If it depends on like right now. I'm looking at Action Network's projections. They project him at 25.3 passing attempts. So um, the line, I don't know if it's like 24 and a half or 23 and a half or something, I'd go over. If it's 25 and a half, I'd go under. Um, but yeah, I don't think Riley Leonard throws the ball a lot, so I would do under his pass attempts, under interceptions, but definitely over on the interceptions for Will Howard. I think he tosses one.
I think that's a fair pick. No interception, pun intended. But
Yeah. All right, let's get down to it, man. This is the final game we're gonna do this year. So we got to pick who we think is gonna win, the MVP of the game, and then the lock of the week. Um, Bob, I'll let you start because your lock of the week and your winner pick, I assume, it kind of goes hand in hand. So I'll let you get started.
yeah, I think this is a really good even matchup, and it's really incredible because both of these teams would have had no chance in hell to make the national championship under previous formats, given the loss to Northern Illinois and Ohio State's loss to Michigan, especially. So to see both of these teams work through that and get to this point, obviously both are good. There's experience with both of them. There's familiarity with both, uh, and ultimately, yeah, there's a world where Notre Dame can win this one. Where they play a similar game to like what they played, what Texas played against Ohio State, where they kind of hang around. You get a couple Will Howard mistakes, stuff like that, and they capitalize off of it. I could definitely see that. I just see more worlds, more universes where Ohio State wins this one because of their firepower, because of what they can do on offense. I don't think Notre Dame has faced an offense quite like this, really, so far. I was obviously not very big on Penn State, and then Georgia just was not that this year. So I think this is going to be a test for them for sure. I ultimately think Ohio State's offense is just a little bit too dynamic, and I think their defense is really, really damn good. Riley Leonard, I think, is a solid quarterback, but I think if you take away the running, his ability to run, it puts a cog into Notre Dame. And, frankly, the offensive line, the injuries Notre Dame has had to deal with this year, they've all amounted too much. So I'm going to go Ohio State to win. I also like them to cover, but I'm less sure about that, so I'm not locking it. As for the MVP, let's go with Will Howard. I think it's one of those situations. Actually, they never give it to a defensive guy. I'm gonna give it to Sawyer. Who I think has been just the heart of this Ohio State team as a whole. From just the heartache, at midfield pulling out Michigan flags to that crazy touchdown against Texas. That's my pick for MVP. Those were probably multiple segments. I apologize.
No, you covered it all. You covered it all.
Cool. All right, good.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, I agree with you that I think like if I'm using my head, like I don't see how Ohio State doesn't win this. I think there's just too many signs that they're too well rounded. I think Notre Dame, as talented as they are, this feels like a mountain that in college football, sometimes these discrepancies are discrepancies for a reason. Sometimes these lines are big for a reason. Um, and so I think at this level, it's hard for me to be like, yeah, these two teams are. It could go either way. I think Ohio State probably wins the game. Um, Notre Dame covering is possible though. Like again, if they play the perfect game, bait Ohio State into making some uncharacteristic mistakes, maybe the defense, maybe they win the defensive battle and are able to play some good defense on Jeremiah Smith and some of these receivers and tight ends that Ohio State has. Maybe they also are able to win at the line of scrimmage even without their starting defensive lineman. Like, I think all those things are possible. And again, 8.5 is a pretty big number. Maybe Notre Dame gets it done. But I do agree with you that Ohio State wins. If I had to pick an MVP, um, I like Jeremiah Smith. He's going to have if he continues his trajectory, he can have a very illustrious career at Ohio State. We thought that Marvin Harrison Jr. was, the most touted wide receiver we'd seen in a while, especially coming out of the Ohio State, which is a wide receiver factory. Um, but Jeremiah Smith has already got a great reputation. As young as he is, he's going to play a couple more years in school, and an MVP in the championship game can definitely, boost his entire career, NIL, all that good stuff. So we're going to give it to him. And Bobby, his lock of the week is Ohio State. He's just doing Ohio State money line, no cover, none of that, which is fine. Before I give my pick for lock of the week, we're going to explain how we're going to do this. Now, I'm a very fair. I'll call myself the producer of the show. Let's do that. Let's
Yeah, for sure.
The title. I'm a very fair producer. I'm a very fair host. Bobby, for this entire year that we've been doing Lock of the Week, Bobby's pretty much been in the lead the entire time. That's my fault. I gotta make better picks, but I didn't want to penalize Bobby for just because I'd gotten a little close and because he he did well. He's great. I was willing to give him the crown of Lock of the Week winner for 2024, 2025. I was going to give him the crown. And I told him he could opt out of picking a lock and just take home his winnings today. However, Bobby has said, hell nah, let's ride. Quoting verbatim what he said. So
in the document, put it in the notes beside.
So here's the deal. If Bobby, or not just Bobby, if mine or Bobby's lock of the week is incorrect, it knocks off 2 points. If mine or Bobby's pick is correct, we get 4 points. Now, here's how this works. That means it's really a lot of it's in Bobby's favor, right? So it means if Bobby and I both win, Bobby still wins. If Bobby and I both lose, Bobby still wins. The only way that I become Lock of the Week champion is if Bobby loses and I win. And he's accepted these terms, so it's all going to be fair. So that's how the scoring is going to go for the final Lock of the Week of the season. And my pick after all that is I'm sticking. The over-unders have served me well. Have served me well for the playoff, at least. Last week, I had the correct pick of Penn State and Notre Dame over 46.5. Bobby, of course, had Ohio State -6. So, again, the scoreboard's 18. Bobby's 22. We told you about the rules already. But anyway, my luck of the week for this week. Like I said, the over-unders have been good to me throughout the playoff. And I'm taking the under. I'm taking the under of this game. 45.5 is the line. I've said in a lot of my arguments for taking the over, especially with Notre Dame, I've had 2 winning weeks taking Notre Dame overs. And my argument has always been they score enough points to, even in blowouts, they score enough points to get you to the over. And you can make the same argument about Ohio State. Obviously, Ohio State can score a lot of points. They can put a lot of points on the board. This game can hit the over, by halftime, right? Easily. But I do think that this game is going to be more of a defensive game. Um, I know that Mercedes-Benz Stadium is technically a dome. It's technically covered, but it's very going to be very cold in Atlanta. Bobby and I talked about this before we started recording. The high is going to be 30 degrees, so it's going to be cold. That cold, I think, is going to not affect the game, but I think that's going to be a somewhat of a factor because you know, they're mostly indoors, right? You're not going to be outside too much, but it's going to be a cold weekend in Atlanta. The you know closed stadium, but probably still going to have some cold air seeping in somehow. Um, so yeah, I envision this to be a defensive game. It's going to be hard for Notre Dame to score points. Notre Dame has a good defense. I can see them slowing down Ohio State a little bit. I think Ohio State wins, like I said in my pick, but um, I'm taking the under here with a 45 and a half, and I'm going to ride with that. That's my lock of the week, my final lock of the week of the season. So there you have
I really like that pick because I feel like every time we see these two teams play, it's a bit of a rock fight.
yeah,
And at this point in the season, there's so much tape of them on playing at a high level. These, yeah, I could definitely see this thing getting ugly. So I'm a fan. I'm a fan of that under.
all right, great. Well, appreciate you guys for tuning in. Thank you so much. We will see you after the championship game to tell you about, obviously, break down the game, talk about it, and tell you about what's next. But appreciate it. Can't wait for this one. We'll see you. We'll see you after this. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.
All right, good deal.
Great job.